I want to read this because I feel like reading this. As for Yu-Gi-Oh, I don't feel myself in odd play. At the current moment, I don't feel invested in competitive play. I'm a bit burnt out on playing Memento, and I might start looking to play new decks, though I don't love the price associated with such a choice. That is like a big issue I have with Yu-Gi-Oh. You know what I mean? It's that just because the game kind of rotates in regards to what decks and how many decks are viable at a given time, as well as the fact that old decks still manage to exist within the space, it can be a little frustrating to kind of play the same deck over and over and over again, and it's either just forever hovering at like tier 2, tier 3, tier 1.5 status, and just like ping-ponging below that, and like everyone else is just like at your locals is just like picking up yugioh, picking up Fiendsmith, picking up like Cash Fiendsmith, picking up Malice, and just like consistently just like scamming wins because their decks are so pushed, and you're playing like a tier 1.5 to 2 archetype. And you could say like, oh well, that's just the meta deck and you should just be playing the tier 1 deck. But it's kind of like people play card games for fun specifically, and playing a deck that whose playstyle you enjoy is fun, but when it very obviously suffers clear weaknesses that newer pushed decks don't have, it can be very frustrating to play. The main reason why I stopped playing like Labyrinth, it's not like the deck is bad, like the deck is arguably pretty good, but it's very frustrating to like be playing Labyrinth for like 6 months, 8 months, 12 months, like a year and a half in my case, and like I've just seen like Snake-Eyed come and go, I've seen Yubel come and go, I've seen Malice and Ryziel exist, and it's just like, why do these decks get to play through 4 hand traps, but my deck just kind of loses to a single Ash Blossom, you know what I mean? This is exactly why I don't play Yu-Gi-Oh as a physical game. Decks get rotated out too quickly, and for that small period of time, it is hell. Yeah, especially because deck rotation in Yu-Gi-Oh is very inconsistent. It's not like Pokemon where it happens like once a year, or it's not like on like a set defined like ban list schedule where we have it like every 8 months, like we're guaranteed to kill this deck or we're guaranteed to kill this deck. It's very flip-floppy on whether or not certain cards or decks or archetypes will get banned or not. And again, most of it just ultimately boils down to Konami being like, I don't know, we might ban it, we might not ban it. Like Tenpai and Snake-Eye are decks that have existed for arguably way too long in their current form at like full power, and only now just got banned. But like Fiendsmith is still around, basically just as long, if not longer, but it's still kind of kicking, and it's like, Konami, are we gonna do something about this? Very frustrating. I may look to start playing the new deck, though I don't love the price associated with such a choice. Oh yeah, also the second thing is like price, where like you could be like, okay, you know, I gotta pick up a new deck. It's, you know, like whatever, it's not gonna be that bad. And then you look at the price of some of the cores for these decks, and then it's like White Rabbit is like $150 for a playset. If you look at like Ryziel, like this deck is still fuck ass expensive. Like $75 for a playset. X is $60 for a playset. Just like a very frustrating experience to have to buy new cards and new staples and whatever, just because like you want to swap decks. Like let's say you are like a Ryziel player. Like this is kind of why I get frustrated when people just say like, oh, if you have the staples, you never have to like buy them again, and like all the staples are transferable. It's not really a great argument because not all staples are really transferable. Like, let's say you play Labyrinth. Let's say you're playing like Trap Labyrinth, and you have to buy a playset of Dominus Impulse because that deck is really, really good at abusing Dominus Impulse. It's a normal trap, whatever. And it's like, oh my god, this card is $57 a copy. So you're like, fuck it, whatever. You buy your 3 copies. You got your playset for like $160, and you play Labyrinth for like maybe 6 months, and you're like, okay, maybe I'm kind of done with this deck. And then Ryziel drops, and you're like, okay, cool. Like I want to play Ryziel, and I've already sunk in some costs into staples. I should be fine. And then you realize that not only does Ryziel not play Dominus Impulse, so that makes this investment kind of dead in the water for now, but you also have to play the Mulch Armies. You have to buy the Mulch Armies because those cards are really, really good and whatever. You have to buy the Fuolos, you have to buy like 3 Fuoloses, which is like $300, and you have to buy 3 Purulias, which is $450 total. And you're like, okay, sure, whatever. You bite that bullet, and then you want to play like Malice, and then you realize that Malice doesn't always play Purulia. It's like sometimes in the side, and then like sometimes like you're looking at deck lists that don't even play Fuolos. It's just like not all staples are one-to-one transferable, so it's very, very frustrating just to be on that like kind of receiving end of it. You know what I mean? Very blah. Staples also get rotated out. Yeah, exactly. Like like Triple Tactics Thrust and like the Talents package, that's like a package that for a while was like very expensive, but just didn't see any play. But people still had to kind of buy them because like, oh, what if I might need to use it in this deck, or this random list saw tops using it, so what if I need to use it for that? Like until Rarity 3, it was just like these packages are sometimes just like unnecessarily expensive. Very frustrating, very dumb. My lack of passion isn't wholly the game's fault. Yu-Gi-Oh isn't a bad spend at all. I just think I'm finding myself lacking the passion and enthusiasm I normally bring to this wonderful, beautiful game. I'm still playing it, but in it less right now. Perhaps a new deck or ideology towards Yu-Gi-Oh will change my mind, or perhaps I'll dig into a different passion, whether that be rediscovering a love for life, games, media, or Among Us. Yeah, for the most part, she's pretty right on that. I think Yu-Gi-Oh, again, I've talked about the step ladder power creep many times, but for those of you who haven't heard it, the basic idea is that when Yu-Gi-Oh goes through sets or rotations or bans, it will get better or worse as time goes on. It will always inevitably march towards being way more powerful. Like here is like, I don't know, the format before tier limit, and like here's tier limit format. And well, tier limit's not a great idea. Let's say like Kashira format, and then we get some Kashira bans, and then we go down a little bit in power, and then maybe we get a new deck, which was whatever the deck that came out after Kashira. I think it was like Snake Eye. I don't know. Who cares? And like, you know, we got some Snake Eye bans, you know, we got a little Senpai bans, and now here we are with like Ryzeal, and now we're like going up, and then you keep going up and up, up and down, up and down, up and down with like minor hits, minor bans, minor hits. Minor bans, and then like just the card design just keeps eventually just going higher and higher and higher, you know what I mean? Like eventually we're just hitting this like straightforward trend line of cards are always going to be doing more, they're going to have less restrictions on them, they're going to be more powerful, they're going to be less constituent on like your deck building or whatever, and then like that just leads to like cruxes of decks like fucking like Malice, which are like 10 to 12 card engines with maybe like 1 or 2 bricks, or like Ryzeal, like 10 to 13 card engines with like 1 or 2 bricks that are basically able to fucking hit the gritty and play through basically anything, you know what I mean? But yeah, just like this sort of hyper homogenized card design is very frustrating, and I can understand why people are starting to fall out of love with the game, and I don't blame her. Game can be a lot. Anyways, that's just my 2 cents about it. This is just like a little side tangent.